Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to figure out exactly how the author weaponizes suspense in episode 3 of The Echo at the Door. We're going to break down this incredibly intense sequence of events and see if we can literally uncover the blueprint of a nightmare. If you've read the source material, you already know how suffocating this scene feels. But today, we're exploring why it feels that way, structurally and psychologically. So let's dive right into this.
So what is the most terrifying sound in the dark? Is it a heavy footstep, a whisper, or is it a sound that breaks the very laws of reality? I want you to hold on to that thought as we move forward today. The author brilliantly attacks our psychological vulnerabilities, not by just throwing a standard monster at us, but by systematically taking away our basic understanding of what's actually possible. Let's break this massive escalation down into 4 distinct phases, starting with the opening sequence.
Phase 1, the impossible setup.
This is the exact moment Ryan's physical reality is just completely shattered. The scene opens right as a mysterious hand outside his window simply disappears. And honestly, how quickly the author moves from a standard jump scare to a complete destabilization of physics and logic is just fascinating. Second floor, impossible. Right after the hand vanishes, Ryan nearly falls over. His heart is pounding so violently, he actually feels dizzy. Notice the breathless, staccato pacing of those words. The author uses these super short, fragmented sentences to perfectly mimic a pounding, panicked heartbeat. Ryan suddenly realizes the sheer spatial horror of where he is. I mean, he's not on the ground floor, he is elevated. A hand at a second-story window without any support simply should not be there.
Ryan immediately switches on his flashlight, desperately expecting some sort of rational explanation. But the light reveals absolutely nothing, only rain. No ladder, no balcony. This complete absence of evidence forces both Ryan and us, the audience, into an escalating state of panic and self-doubt. Because if there is literally no physical way for something to be outside that window, then whatever just happened defies logic altogether. And just as Ryan is struggling to process this impossible setup, the author forcefully shifts gears.
Phase 2, the trusted voice. We abruptly transition from a visual and spatial threat to a deeply unsettling auditory manipulation phase. This whole new phase is triggered by the sudden ringing of Ryan's phone from an unknown caller. His hands are literally shaking as he answers it. Now, a phone is usually a lifeline to the outside world, right? But here, it becomes the weapon. Notice how the threat actually progresses. First, they're static. It's a classic technique to isolate the character. But then, it escalates to step 2, his mother's voice. Step 3, that exact same voice echoing from downstairs inside his own house. And finally, the absolute most horrifying shift of all, step 4, Ryan's own voice. The threat systematically tightens its grip around him, moving from a disconnected electronic sound to a deeply personal, localized terror. Let's zero in on that terrifying second step.
The voice on the phone says, "Ryan? Open the door. I forgot my keys." His blood absolutely freezes. And I mean, why wouldn't it? The horror here stems from pure geographical impossibility. His mother is visiting relatives 300 kilometers away. The pure terror isn't just hearing a scary voice in the dark. It's hearing a voice of absolute safety and trust. His own mother, coming from a place where she cannot possibly be. The entity is basically exploiting his deepest emotional bonds. And then the author anchors the psychological terror right into the physical space.
The text explicitly describes 3 agonizing knocks. Knock, knock, knock. This acts as a terrifying auditory anchor that is demanding entry from the front door. Ryan just stops breathing altogether. The voice is coming from the phone pressed to his ear, and simultaneously, his mother's voice is echoing upward from the front door downstairs. This simultaneous dual-location audio completely shatters Ryan's sense of safety inside his own home. Terror literally roots him in place. He rationally knows it couldn't be her. The call disconnects, leaving him in silence. But those 3 knocks, they continue.
Phase 3, the doppelganger shift. Ryan finally begins creeping toward the darkened staircase. The text emphasizes that darkness is just filling the lower floor of his house. And right as he's peering down into that void, the entity shifts to an entirely new, even more sinister tactic. Notice the 2 distinct strategies the entity uses here. First, it used the mother. That strategy relied on exploiting Ryan's trust and the sheer horror of geographical impossibility. But now it switches to the self. This new tactic completely relies on the uncanny valley effect and causes total psychological destabilization. The voice from downstairs changes. It's still familiar, but now it is his own.
In terms of human psychology, an entity stealing your own voice is the ultimate violation. It completely erases the boundary between you and the monster in the dark.
Rian, let me in. Just sit with that line for a second. Hearing yourself beg for entry from the darkness. It is deeply uncanny and entirely paralyzing. Rian instinctively backs away. This isn't just an intruder at the door anymore. It's a warped mirror of himself standing in the pitch black of his own hallway, calling his name.
And then, the author isolates very specific sensory triggers to really build the dread just before the climax. The knocking stops. Complete silence. Total darkness fills the lower floor. And then, the doorknob slowly turns, back and forth. Someone or something is actively trying to enter his space. The real masterclass in suspense here is the author's use of silence. The sudden absence of the knocking and the familiar voices creates this terrifying vacuum that is immediately filled by the slow, mechanical, inevitable sound of the doorknob turn.
Phase 4. The final visual proof.
So now we've moved from auditory torment to undeniable physical evidence. Ryan's phone suddenly buzzes. It harshly breaks the agonizing silence of that turning doorknob. It's a new message. He opens it up to find a photo, and the subject to the photo? His very own staircase, taken from below. This single image completely shatters the barrier between the unknown outside and the sanctuary of his inner home. It's definitive, undeniable proof that he is no longer alone. The entity has breached the perimeter. It isn't just at the door anymore. So the absolutely crucial question we are forced to ask is, who took the photo? Or rather, what took the photo? The author brilliantly forces the viewer to confront the terrifying reality of the entity's perspective. By looking at this image on his phone, Ryan and the reader are literally seeing through the eyes of the monster looking up at the exact space Ryan currently occupies.
Notice the timestamp. It reads 12:14 a.m. The text explicitly adds two words, just now. This is arguably the most horrifying detail of the entire episode. Why? Because the threat isn't some past event. It is incredibly active in this exact, agonizing second. The slight delay between the photo being taken, sent, and received by Ryan means the entity could already be moving up those stairs.
And finally, Ryan looks at the bottom corner of the image. A shadow stood, looking up at him. This chilling final visual basically cements the ultimate transition. What began as an impossible outside threat, a hand at a second-story window, has fully become an imminent inside reality. The shadow is inside the house, it's at the base of the stairs, and it is looking directly up at him.
Which brings us to the end of this explainer and leaves us with one incredibly unsettling, lingering thought. If it has your voice and your reflection, what does it do when it reaches the top of the stairs? The brilliant construction of the echo at the door leaves us trapped in that exact moment of paralyzed realization right alongside Ryan. The suspense is perfectly engineered from start to finish. Thank you so much for joining me as we unravel the anatomy of this terrifying scene. I hope this gave you a deeper appreciation for the mechanics of fear, even if it leaves you craving the next chapter to find out what happens. I don't know about you, but I'm absolutely going to be double-checking my locks tonight.